For being here today. As we have heard, housing is the #1 driver of inflation and continues to outpace wage gains. Our nation is facing a housing crisis, and this committee did constant work on the issue under the leadership of then Chair Waters. Yet the Republican majority has chosen to delay working toward legislative solutions to address the housing affordability crisis. In the greater Houston area where my district is, there are only 33,000 affordable homes or places to rent for more than 217,000 extremely low-income renters. 83% of these extremely low-income households spend more than 50% of their income on housing. Ms. Bailey, given the high demand for affordable housing options in many communities across our districts, including my own, what types of housing are needed to close the housing supply gap?
Thank you for the question. We need to make sure we are thinking about the missing middle. Right now, there's an opportunity for us to bring in things like accessory dwelling units. And while those are important opportunities in community to help lower overall housing costs, financing still becomes a major challenge for consumers of color. And that's why we keep saying it's a fair and affordable housing crisis. We need to make sure consumers of color are not locked out of accessing credit on a fair basis, which they currently are. The recent record settlements by the Department of Justice shows that we continue to see discrimination in the marketplace. So we need to make sure we're focusing on the missing middle. And then we need to utilize programs like first-generation programs. These are programs designed for people whose prior generations were locked out of homeownership opportunity and who don't come with the kind of background to the housing sector that others might have when they arrive. First-generation down payment assistance in the Housing Crisis Response Act would help rural and urban borrowers access homeownership. And if we pass it at the level of the Down Payment Toward Equity Act, we would actually grow homeownership by 5 million new home buyers. 1.7 million of them would be Black, 1.4 million of them would be white, and 1.32 million of them would be Latino. And we need inclusive policies like that to give people a chance to run up against investors who are really making it very difficult for first-generation home buyers to enter into the marketplace.
Mm-hmm. And to follow up, can you speak to whether the private market can solve the housing crisis on its own, or as one of my colleagues from the other side referenced, without the government getting involved? Can the private industry solve the housing crisis on their own?
Do you remember the Great Recession of 2008? That's the only time our housing market was purely private. And that led to the United States housing market crashing and a global collapse. We need an all-out, everything and approach. This is $150 billion in the Housing Crisis Response Act. $150 billion that we've all negotiated. We've done all the backdoor conversations. That is a compromise. That is a solution that would help millions of consumers all over the nations. And it would help jumpstart the economy. We keep saying housing is 20% of the US's GDP. If housing tanks, the economy tanks, and we don't want to return to that.
Mm-hmm. So are there any other considerations that need to be made by Congress, for example, to help address and increase the limited supply of affordable housing?
Yes, passing comprehensive legislation. There was not any bipartisan support for the Build Back Better Act, sadly. We're asking today for there to be bipartisan support for the Housing Crisis Response Act, the Down Payment Toward Equity Act, and all of those other very sensible provisions. They're not outlandish. They're not tons of money thrown at a problem. They're very practical things that would keep the housing sector safe. Again, we are looking at a housing sector where, in terms of homeownership, white homeownership is set to decline. So if borrowers of color are locked out of fairly accessing credit, that means seniors won't be able to have anyone to sell their homes to reach a successful retirement. That means overall instability, and we don't want an outcome like that.
Right. Is there any other considerations that we should take when it comes to housing for seniors or for veterans?
We want to make sure we are supporting things like housing choice vouchers. Seniors and veterans often rely on those programs, and we have been calling on the GSEs to really make sure in their contracts with multifamily unit developers that they are making sure that there will be no discrimination against housing choice voucher holders.
Okay, well, thank you. I see I'm down to less than 10 seconds, so I might as well yield because I won't even get a question out in that time.